So welcome to Men on Everything. This is our weekly show, except when one of us goes on vacation, where we talk about things. And Mark, Mark been working a hard 4 or 5 weeks. Had to get that vacation in, man.
Y'all
That's
know,
good.
the vacation comes first, baby.
Yes.
Mark takes the family. They go down to South Carolina, and I've always been envious of that because I just think that's a great getaway. It always looks good when he puts pictures up. Mm-hmm. So you get a chance to relax, man.
Yeah, man. It was.
But let me be honest though, man, because you just started this job, and were you anxious to get back to it though, man? Because it's in your blood.
Well, two things. The wife insisted that I ask to take a vacation. As you guys know, in our business, I was like, what? Now, the funny thing was, we actually got into a fight. There was a job opportunity, and we got into a theory fight on that job. Troy remembers. That didn't happen. But it was like, you should ask for vacation. We got into a whole... So this time around, I'm like, I will ask, okay? Because again, Tony and Troy, as we know, all of your power is when you come through the door, baby. Coming in is the only time you're really going to have any negotiation power.
Yeah.
And so...
It's like the first 100 days of being the president, Those are your most effective days, man.
Do it now.
That's what happened. I was like, hey, man, I need this. I need this.
Yeah.
No problem. What? So,
man.
What? Okay. I'm not used to this.
Wow.
So, yeah,
cool.
I was able to keep the 14-year tradition alive.
That's cool.
And have a job and actually pay for the vacation. So
that was cool.
Go ahead.
That made the vacation. This had to be the best one in 14 years, huh?
You know what? It was. It probably was to be able to contribute.
I'm happy for you, man. We've known each other for so long. The three of us that and knowing what you've been through. For you, I'm still riding on cloud 9 when it comes to you having this job, man. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
now if we can get Troy,
we just need 2 more. We just need 2 more jobs.
Can we get an order? Can we get an order for 2 more?
2 more. All we need is all we need is 2 more jobs.
2 more jobs.
Mark,
can you help some brothers out?
Yeah, and Mark, tell me about this vacation thing. I heard a lot about it. Sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, Troy been grinding for a minute. But see, let me say this though. Troy and Tony, you guys have this kind of, y'all know me. When I made 14.5, I took a vacation. You two.
I remember Mark going down to the Bahamas or Jamaica with no money.
Nothing.
So he would just kind of like walk into these beach parties and that'd be his dinner. Yeah. That's how you roll. That's how Mark rolled though. That is Mark.
And you guys, on the other hand, will work your fingers to the bone and not take a vacation. Like even when you have vacation.
This is true. Well, you know what I learned
to take vacation.
Yeah, but you know what I learned in the last 5 years, 10 years, because toward the last 5-10 years, I got 5 weeks of vacation a year when I was working. And I learned during that time, I took it all. Because I used to leave a lot of vacation on the table, man. I used to get 3-4 weeks, and I'd take maybe half of it, and you don't get to roll it over, so I would lose it.
Troy.
But then I learned about 5-10 years ago that I'm taking my vacation, and I would take 5 weeks,
Troy.
and
I don't know what a vacation is, man.
I'd
love to feel it. I would love
Troy,
to be
you also notorious for not taking vacations, though.
Yeah, I think, but I do agree with Tony. I like him have always envied this trip that you take to South Carolina because, first of all, and Tony, you're gonna laugh at this. Mark loves vacation more than any person I know. And like you said, anybody who's willing to get on a plane and go somewhere with no money. But we all, we crack on Mark for his timeliness in terms of returning phone calls. And I tell you what, the only time this dude changes his voicemail is when he goes on vacation. Hi, this is Mark Clark. I'm on vacation, but I'll get back with you on the 27th. And of course, he'll leave that up for 3 months. But
yeah,
I got to change that. You're right.
Yeah, see, you haven't changed it yet, huh?
Haven't changed it yet. I don't know what and I'm like, so obviously it means an awful lot to him. I would love to. I think for me, I've always thought that, for vacation for me would really have to be something more exotic, something really, like Hong Kong or something outrageous. Then I think I would really feel like, okay, finally,
Right.
I've really had a very special vacation. So I guess I'm kind of holding out for that. But
Well,
I've been taking lots of staycations.
me,
I tell you that.
me and the wife and the girls recently we went to L.A. for the Scandal meetup, and it was kind of like a vacation. And my plan when we were invited, I was working, and my plan was I wanted to take a vacation, and this was going to be the one where I was going to have enough finances where nothing was impossible. You know, if I wanted to buy, a laptop while I was in California, I was going to buy. I mean, I wanted that kind of vacation where money was not an object. You girls want to buy a new wardrobe. I mean, I was serious, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, I got let go from my job and wasn't able to do that. So on vacation, we didn't end up going. Troy went too. We hung out a little bit, but I didn't enjoy it as much as they did. And of course, as long as they did, I'm happy. That's how we are as fathers. But I couldn't enjoy it because money was going out, nothing was coming in, and I was always mindful of that, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of one of the meals and stuff, I would just drink up in the hotel lobby. They had this cucumber water, man. I was tanking up on that. I was peeing green, man. It was like.
And Troy, the sad part about that cucumber water, Troy, was when they put that together, that was to make people not want it. And Tony was
Tony's like, this is great.
Right.
I was putting. My girls were making fun of me. It was just one of those things. But man.
Oh man.
So we're all fresh off the VMAs. The Emmy Awards got moved to Monday because of football. Mm-hmm. Have the Emmy Awards become that irrelevant where it can just get moved because of football? I mean, I could easily ask the question, is football that big? But I think the answer is clearly yes. Football is taken over as America's sport. And I get that as a baseball fan. And I like football, but I love baseball. But I understand how big football is. But have the Emmys become so irrelevant they can just push it off until a Monday night?
Well, the organizers said there's a greater chance that an African American will win an Emmy than the show stay and interfere with football. So it's kind of weird for him to say that, but he was right. There was no black wins.
Man,
I saw a tweet today that said Seth Meyers, 13 funniest jokes of the night.
Wow, man.
I didn't watch, and I don't think anybody else did.
A lot of people didn't watch, and the people that I know, some people that I follow said that it was a yawner, man. It was really.
A Hollywood backslap, basically that's what it is. Hey, let's get together, take some pictures, and give each other some awards. So, I mean, how exciting is that supposed to be for us? Now, watching Julia Louis-Dreyfus French kiss Heisenberg, is that supposed to be entertaining for me?
Yeah,
is that what I'm supposed to enjoy?
Right. I think the business model needs to change, man, because, network TV has fallen off so much. And, then you've got like Netflix and stuff that has their own series now that are very popular. And I think the business model almost needs to change. They got the reality TV component, which I don't even think should be mentioned, but it is. But I don't care for reality TV, but I knowing how popular they are, maybe they need their own awards. Maybe they have to have the reality TV awards.
Well,
the Nene Leakes Icon Award or something,
Well, it's interesting, Tony, you said, you're right. Like, the weird part about, you're right, the way we watch TV, like Breaking Bad, like you said, the cable channels are so much more exciting. So when Parsons wins yet again on network TV, mm-hmm. compared to the stuff that Louis C.K. is doing, which is really funny, like groundbreaking, really funny, versus,
what TV used to be.
Right, versus kind of the milquetoast network. It almost feels like it's not even, like, you're right, it almost feels like Veep needs its own thing on cable where it could be better. Mm-hmm. And then network, because I just think, network has a hard time because the stuff that they're, and they win in a lot of these categories, but in reality, the people who love those shows on cable just seem to be going for more cutting edge shows, I guess I'm trying to say. So you got the cutting edge melding in with the shows that aren't cutting edge, but they may even win. So it kind of ends up being everybody falling flat. It's almost ends up being like everybody suffers. Even a Seth Meyers. Like Seth Meyers is almost the, again, network kind of versus I mean, on network, the only guy who probably be considered cutting edge is Fallon, right? Jimmy Fallon, with his show doing new creative stuff that they're not doing on network. So you're right. It's maybe a crossroads.
I mean, it just seems like, network TV, and maybe it's because the restrictions the government has over the air broadcasts, that you can't do certain things, show certain things at certain times, and it's but cable can.
But you know what? As somebody who zooms, me, I lightly zoom in on all of this stuff, and I think it helps me get a better perspective because I'm not mired in it. All of these jokes sound the same nowadays on all of these shows. The difference between Veep and what's the guy that won? What show is he on?
Oh, The Big Bang Theory?
The Big Bang Theory is, it's snarky jokes, one with profanity, one without. So, I mean, every commercial, every TV show has this snarky 21st century LOL kind of laugh, like almost like comment on Twitter. Like somebody zinging somebody on Twitter. All these jokes are built the same way.
Well, you know what? I think, like I said, I think the business model, it's like when the iPod became so popular, and, being in radio when it came out, everybody was saying, oh, man, y'all got competition now, the iPod and all that, right? And then it was not really, and then it became, satellite radio, man, it's free. Well, it's not free. You got to pay $10 a month, at the time, and so it's not free. And so, but then came along, the apps, iHeartRadio and Pandora and Spotify, and now radio finds itself it really in a tough spot, because even though radio continues to be free, what you're offering isn't necessarily what the people want as much. Maybe they want it as much, but now they have more options. And on television, first you had the broadcast channels, and then cable came around. Well, actually, then the UHF, the high, channel 39, all that came around, and then you had the cable channels, and so now that's expanded and to a level that no one ever imagined, which really is a shame, because you have, all they do is, and this is what deregulation has done, because, NBC owns USA and they own Clue, and so they just move their shows around. So they're not giving you really anything original. They're just pushing stuff around and repeating stuff, right? Yeah. Because they figure your favorite show is going to come on at some point. You'll catch it when you catch it, right? And to a degree, maybe they're right. But then now you have like YouTube and Netflix and Hulu and all the stuff like that. Amazon's dabbling in some original programming, so now people have options, and they can watch when they want to watch.
And do you even want to see what if you give me a couple of episodes of Sanford and Son, I'm good. I don't need to see this new stuff for real. Right. Because it's not as funny as that. I mean, those shows, you can name, that's my favorite one, but you can name quite a few shows that just stand the test of time for some particular reason, mostly because these new writers aren't good.
Right.
They don't know how to write. So,
And then I guess you do, and it's weird, because I guess you do have, I think Modern Family's funny, and I think they're pretty innovative. So it's weird, I forgot about them. You know what? Also, it's fun, to be honest, if you had a different host, that changes the energy of the show too, I think. Like if you do have an edgy host, or a host that, again, I think Louis C.K. or Jimmy Fallon or somebody who's going to bring it, you end up talking about it more, or disruptor, than if you just bring kind of the, again, nothing against my man, but what's his name?
Seth Meyers. But you know what, Mark, though, but I think because
it's my man. I don't know.
Well, I don't know what his name is.
Whatever his name.
Because the model is old and busted. Yeah. I can't imagine the Emmys choosing someone whose show is on cable or Netflix as being the host of the Emmys.
But remember, didn't Richie Gervais didn't he do that 2 years in a row? Remember?
Yeah, but
and he pissed people off, and it kind of but it got I think it did kind of raise the energy of the show,
Yeah.
Didn't they have him come back the next year? Didn't he do it 2 years in a row?
He did it 2 years. Second year, they were like, "No way, no how, ever again."
It was too real,
So, but as long as they got the stuffy old board of directors and people like making those decisions, it's going to continue to be that way. So, so I guess Beyonce and Jay-Z put the rumors to rest about their marriage being in trouble.
For a day.
or for a day, or maybe it was all for show. I don't know. They
Well,
looked happy.
One thing that came out of that Jay-Z's appearance is nobody wants to wear the hat that Jay-Z had on. So it did not cause a Twitter conversation. No one,
Arby's didn't buy it.
yeah, people did not have any interest in that hat.
It wasn't a Pharrell moment, huh?
It was not a Pharrell. It was the anti-Pharrell hat moment. People
Man.
were like, ooh. Mm-mm.
What about before the VMAs, that party where Suge Knight got shot 6 times?
Yeah.
And now he doesn't want to cooperate with the police because snitches get stitches, and which is the stupidest thing I've ever one of the
Snitches get
stupidest
stitches.
things.
But he did win the 50 Cent Icon Award for getting shot 6 times.
Yeah, but 50 called him
out to those who are shot over 6 times. 6 times.
50 called him an amateur though. He said get shot 9 times and then come back and
get
see
enough.
me.
I owe you 3 more. That's actually the prize.
Yeah, you must be affiliated with a rap label or.
But
in
aren't there
entertainment.
reports that Chris Brown was actually the target?
I was just going to say that. Is that true?
I mean, that's what the rumor. That's what the streets is saying.
Streets is talking, man. Streets is talking.
Well,
That's,
Trey
by the way,
Songz-
the street said hi.
the streets want more attention. They say they get credit for talking, but never for putting in the whole sentence. Streets.
Streets. Hey man, I saw this came out in the paper on Sunday here in St. Louis, and it's I don't know if you can see that, out of balance. And what it does is it lists there are like 91 municipalities around St. Louis City. St. Louis, this area is pretty unique because St. Louis City is not part of St. Louis County. St. Louis City is not part of anybody's county. They're like an island of their own. So this is a list of some of the municipalities and their black population, and then the percentage of police force that is black. And it was pretty eye opening to see, like Riverview, which is 70% African American, has no black police officers. And then you got like Northwoods, which is 94% black, has 59% police that are African American. But you go over,
is that the best example of?
I mean, there's a whole list of them. Some of them seem pretty balanced, but some of them are way off the mark. Some of them are not surprising. Overland is 16% African American. They have no black police officers. Well, but then you have areas where it's just kind of surprising. Bell Fountain Neighbors is 73% African American. They only have a 3% black police force. And it's kind of surprising in a way. But then if you've lived here for any amount of time, it really isn't surprising.
Well, I understand the news anchor to black viewer ratio is even lower than that. So.
Well, I have to think about that for a minute. But I think it's gotten better since you've lived here, though. I think it has. But
Malcolm Briggs represented 8.5 million blacks on television.
We have Julius Hunter on line 3.
Well, but what's happened here? It's pretty interesting with the situation regarding Michael Brown. And he was laid to rest this week, and it's sad. I mean, and some people, and it's a shame because some people, they criticize Al Sharpton for even being there when they forget Al Sharpton was invited. Michael Brown's family invited Al Sharpton. He was invited to be part of this, so you can't really hate on Al. And if he said no, I'm not coming, he's going to get criticized for that. So I mean, the man came, and as much as you may not care for Al Sharpton, he doesn't hurt the situation, in my opinion. Some people think he does. And then I got in a Twitter conversation with someone who didn't understand why Michael Brown's funeral was turned into an event. And I tried to explain that Michael Brown dying it's more than about Michael Brown dying. It's a large part of it, but you have to understand the situation. You have to understand that perspective. You have to understand that life. And if you do not, and I'm not by any way insinuating Michael Brown had a bad life, I'm just saying it's a different perspective. When you are an African American in this country, there's a lot of baggage that comes with that. There's a lot of history, and people don't want to realize that. And I blogged about this, that, you know, some people's their world is their world. I'm not talking about black folks. I'm talking about people who live elsewhere. So what happened in Ferguson is not their reality. What happened to Michael Brown is not their reality. So in their mind, you know, there's no way that a police officer could just shoot an unarmed kid for no reason at all. It's not possible, because the police are our friend. How can that even be? How can we even think that that's even possible to do? He had to have been doing something to warrant him getting shot. But that's people who cannot relate and who do not care to understand a different perspective. That's their reality. That's their world, where the police are their friend. That's their world. And what we have is a failure to understand that not everything is about that. You know, when I was a kid, it kind of surprised me when I was like, I wasn't even a teenager, but when I realized that not everybody had a life like me. Not everybody had two parents in the house. Not everybody saw how a man, from a little boy's perspective, how a man loves a woman. Not everybody didn't. I didn't have drama in my house. We didn't have these kinds of things. And when I go to somebody's house when I was a kid, and their mother, there was no father in the house. The mother worked 2 jobs. There wasn't a lot of food in the house. The house was a mess, things like that. I was like, whoa, what the hell is that, right? But then I came to realize that, well, not everybody is like me, but that doesn't mean that they're less than me. It just means that part of their life was different, because when we were riding our bikes to the park to play baseball all day until our noses bled, we were all equal on the field. And so I realized that, right? And it was like when they integrated my elementary school, you know, and we had African American students for the first time, it was like a lot of people were like, whoa. But I was always interested. I was always like, wow, so what's going on, man? You know, I was always like that when they started the free lunch program. You know, everybody who got a free lunch, the people who didn't get a free lunch were seeing those must be really poor people. You know, poor people, they don't bathe every day. I bet he's got head lice. That actually happened. And I remember telling the guy who told me that, I said, well, you had head lice last year. You ain't poor. And we were never cool after that. We were never cool after that.
But when he said, oh, yeah, I forgot, that's what made you mad. Damn. But
the difference is, we do not want to acknowledge that there are people who don't look like us, don't live like us. We don't want to acknowledge that they can still be our equal. We don't want to. We refuse to do that, you know, as a people. And there's something that and until we do that, this is going to keep happening.
And Tony, by the way,
spot on, Tony.
I read your blog, Tony. Now, I don't recall you writing. Are you branching out, Tony? Now is the Edward R. Morrow of Troy. I'm reading Tony. Now I'm reading Tony Scott. I'm like, what? That was a great article, by the way. You just a
Tony
natural,
Scott
man.
writes.
Thank you, man. It's on talking360.com. Just click the Tony Man. But
and great article. I mean, your great story, great analysis, and I think, Tony, even for me, I think for all of us who are familiar with Ferguson and St. Louis, right? It probably what adds to our perspective, but it also made me stop and think, Tony, like people saying, you know, what's going to happen? When will this stop? All these questions, right? It really made me think about, we know that, and you know when they say there's a war on black men, I think as black men, we take that for granted, you know, because it can sound cliche. Even people, I think, like especially people who are not black males, could feel like, okay, here we go. But the fact is, anybody that comes to America, you can ask, and this is real. People from other countries, with black skin or without black skin, ain't nobody trying to be a black man, okay? They don't want to be mistaken for African American. They do not. Why? Because the image of the African American for the world is negative. And I think with this thing in Ferguson really makes me think about that. Sometimes I think I even shove in the corner somewhere is, we really do have to deal with it. I mean, like, you know, it's something you think is going to go away. You know, you think it's gonna magically be dealt with. If people feel like you are less than, or you're a criminal, or they feel that you are the worst of, and you happen to be that person, that race, whatever, and you think that stuff's gonna just go away, we're naive. And so, but we don't really spend a whole bunch of time other than living our life. We think that by living your life a certain way and raising your children a certain way, that will alleviate the problem. I think what Ferguson is kind of reminding us, no, it's not. And generation after generation that still feels this way, police officer, anybody who looks at you in authority, anybody, until you deal with it, it's never, so it does make it kind of just, for me, I think I haven't been that vocal on Ferguson. I've kind of sat back and just watched it, but it really has made me think we really have to do something about, even though the president of the United States is African American, we got to start at the base, man. And like, how do we work on this? And Troy, you've always talked about responsibility, the civic responsibility of an American. I think what you realize is that civic responsibility, fleshing it out, and then making our people, especially, not only aware of it, but also teaching it to our children. I think that's one of the beginning places. It's like we have to have the conversation. We have to have the conversation as a community. Yeah. And I think it starts there and then grows from everywhere else. But what we can't do is just have this, from the rap music to the negative music to the negative images, keep acting as propaganda that continues to create the negative image. And until we deal with that, Suge Knight getting shot 6 times at a party for the VMAs, it contributes to the same problem that's going down in Ferguson. When you see a guy that looks like Suge Knight walking down the street, that's what you think's going to happen. And when there's a party, you think somebody's going to get killed. Man, it does happen. So it's almost like, I guess it just made me realize I can't be passive in watching this. I got to actively do something to try to change the image, man.
And we all do. And I like what you had to say, Mark, because when you think about, we get hyper analytic. Like suddenly there are a whole bunch of armchair lawyers at home watching how this Michael Brown situation unfolds with a grand jury and all that stuff. And people will question, there are only 5 black folks on the jury, in the jury pool, in the grand jury. Well, did y'all register to vote? Did you, when you get your jury card, do you sign up? We don't want, we want justice. We want to make sure that we're getting a fair shake when we want it. But, there needs to be an equal representation on the grand jury for Michael Brown, but there also needs to be on the case that's on the docket right after him, and the one after that too. So you can't have justice just when you want it. We have to do, as you said, a better job of being engaged all the time, and we keep not doing that. These protesters, thank goodness for them, that they are willing to go out there and voice their opinion. And you know what? You don't have to be a PhD or a scholar or an elected official to voice your opinion in this country. You just have to be who you are, and say what's on your mind. As long as you're doing it peacefully and legally, you have the right to assemble. You have a right to express your opinion, and we have to keep doing that.
Last night, a piece of information, a piece of audio came out that CNN got that supposedly is shots being fired in the background while a guy is having an online chat with a girl, and it shows, you hear, Michael Brown may have got shot 6 times, but there were more than 6 bullets fired, if we're to believe this audio. It hasn't really been 100% vetted yet. We're ready to jump to conclusions and say, myself included, that this is legit and everything. This is the audio the police don't want you to hear, I think is what I put on a post. And I want to see if I can play it for you so we can, let people who may not have heard it.
You are pretty. You're so fine. Just going over some of your videos. How could I forget?
What do you think?
Like you said, it hasn't been vetted out yet. It hasn't been authenticated. The guy who was ironically having a Skype conversation like we were with a female friend, inadvertently captured this when he realized that something was going down outside of his apartment. So, when I heard a little bit of the analysis today, they're saying, well, in terms of authentication, how was he able to actually record it? Unless he had an additional recording mechanism attached to his computer or something like that. So they're going to go through all those issues. But for all intents and purposes, if it is authenticated, if it in fact corresponds with the shots that were fired, what people seem to be concerned about is the pause between the groupings of shots. There were roughly 6 shots, then a pause, and then 4. The expert on CNN said at least 4 more shots after that. And what they've said is that that pause creates a problem for Darren Williams in his defense, because in other cases in the past that has been problematic. An officer reacting to a situation and then firing, and then if you had enough time to pause, why are you shooting again? The question that will probably be asked in court, at least what the experts are saying, is that you're going to have to justify all of these bullets being fired. What was the circumstance in firing these shots and then firing these shots? So that's obviously what the situation is going to be. I think it creates an interesting conversation, and Tony, you and I were talking before we started the show about that possibility out there that there is some other video, that there is some other, this piece of audio just coming out now, after we've already kind of felt like we had an idea of how the situation went down, certainly makes you want to pose some additional questions. And who's to say that there aren't some other folks that may have actually caught it on video?
Well, you know what? I spoke to somebody a few days ago, and I told them that I just, in my heart, I believe that there has to be more video and or audio out there that people have that for whatever reason, maybe they're scared, maybe they just don't want to get involved, that they have. Because, people now, man, this is why world star hip hop is a thing, right? Because people go to their phones the minute they see some drama or something popping off. First thing they do is pull out their phones and record it. So, that's what people do these days. And I just think that somebody has, I myself, I really believe somebody has the whole thing, man. I think they have the whole thing.
Wow. Well, I think the couple things that are troubling for me is the similar media moves by the right, with this case similar to Trayvon Martin. You leak the video of Brown allegedly stealing the cigars to make people sympathize with the police officer. Mm-hmm. Then you say the officer had a shattered orbital eye socket,
fracture, right?
That gets leaked out, So the same thing. So then the people, like we talked about, we all armchair lawyers, from each side, kind of like, well, he got. That's why, create
severely damaged facial.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then the video comes out that shows him pacing, with or without a swollen eye. He wasn't. He didn't look like he was in pain at all.
No, he didn't.
And then the story gets withdrawn to say, okay, well, his eye wasn't, whatever. So you're like, man, what is going on here? Like, what's at play? Who are the people that are playing these cards this way? Basically playing, people talk about the race card. It's the race card because you're pushing the buttons of things based on race, fear, ignorance, all the key, it's like right-wing talk shows, you're saying something without saying it. Right. This money that's raised to support this policeman. Why would you raise money for an officer who possibly did this? And why would you blindly support it? What is it based on? And like you said, Tony, your blog, it's based on ignorance, fear, people feeling like there's no way an officer. I saw this. I don't know if you guys saw this. I saw this officer. Probably not, because it's a more New York thing. And he was saying he teaches a course on, first of all, what we need to know about our rights, as citizens. But I thought something was very interesting. He was saying that if you're a male, if you're a black male, if you're a person, period. Tell your kids if they're stopped by the police and they ask them any questions, tell them to either one, not say anything at all, nothing at all, or say, am I under arrest? That's it. Don't say anything at all. And this is a policeman.
Mm-hmm.
He said, because when they stop you, what they know that you don't know, a good person, a nice, a normal person, if an officer stops you, you already are the suspect. You already are the suspect. So now you're proving to them you're in an upside down situation, because you're now proving to them you're not the suspect. They see you, hey, did you see anything? No, I was just walking. Well, how long you been walking? You know what I mean? So they're pursuing you like a suspect. Mm-hmm. So, and I was like, that's wild, man, because good people, the average person, we don't think of it that way.
No.
And we would tell our kids to cooperate with the policemen, right? We would tell them, answer their questions. Da-da-da-da. No, he's saying don't say nothing. Am I under arrest? Or don't say anything at all. And then turn around if he wants to arrest you and allow yourself to be arrested. He said, take away this fear from being arrested. Because if you do that, they now have a chance to come get you, the lawyer, whatever. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, man, that just changed how I look at everything. Because as a parent, that's what I would tell my son. You know, if the policeman stopped you, cooperate with them. If they stop you, you're a suspect.
Wow. I had never thought about it.
I never heard of that, man.
Wow.
And but then on the flip side, now on a bad cop, though, you can see how it would go crazy, though.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, he can say that, and there's a lot of truth to that, and the way you explained it makes a lot of sense. But given what just happened to Michael Brown, there's a lot of people that are going to be like, I don't know, man.
But then on the flip side, I guess the major thing is you don't want to go to jail. But what if you did say, okay, I'm taking you to jail, and you turn around and put your, okay, you don't resist at all.
But I think if you're a black male, your two options are, do I go to jail or do I die?
Mm-hmm. Right. Now that part is the part. But a bad officer, there's no way you can stop. Right. So.
But there are some other things that people most likely aren't aware of, because I think what Mark is getting at is people are fearful in that situation, or obviously they're heightened, like, what's going down, something's happening, but there's a dialogue that's supposed to be going on between you and that officer, and if you ask the police officer for his badge number, if you ask the police officer what's going on, you have to. It's like going to the doctor's office. Okay, if you don't tell the doctor what's happening, if you don't have that dialogue, then something's going to get lost in the sauce. So, it's important to know who arrested you. It's important to know what the circumstances are, whether or not, as Mark says, you choose to deliver any more information. But, I mean, how many people have been stopped by a police officer and have no idea who that officer was?
Well, you know what?
Information.
I think though that being able to question an officer and asking what your name or what your badge number, stuff like that, is well within your rights. But if you're an African American, you don't have that right. You don't get that right, man. You don't get that. I mean, there's a story. I mean, there are tons of stories, especially from the St. Louis area, of police brutality before Michael Brown. One of the more interesting ones were of a 50-year-old black man who was wrongfully arrested. They were looking for the wrong guy, but they beat him, and then they charged him for bleeding on their uniforms.
That was in Ferguson.
Yeah, that was in Ferguson.
Yeah.
Right? So we can have this discussion about what your rights are and all that, and that in a perfect world, well, yeah, but
not a perfect world.
In Ferguson, not a chance in hell.
True.
And
you make a valid point, Tony. I don't discredit, and you're absolutely right. But ignorance is also bliss. Mm-hmm. And anybody who wants to know what's supposed to happen in an arrest, you can Google that information and just arm yourself with some knowledge so you know what's going on if you find yourself in that situation. That's really my only suggestion.
Well, it's interesting though, because when I was working one morning, I was on my way to work and I got pulled over. It must have been like 4 a.m. I got pulled over, and the officer, and this was out here where I live, and the officer pulls me over and he says, "Good morning, my name is Officer so-and-so and so-and-so, and I want to tell you why I'm pulling you over." And I was like, huh? And he says, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." He says, "You were swerving in your lane," which I didn't think I was, but I said, "Okay." He says, "Have you been drinking?" I says, "No, I just left my house. I'm on my way to work." And he says, "Where do you work?" And I told him where I worked, and he was like, he looked at me and he, looked at my driver's license, and then he looked at me again. He gave it back. He says, "All right, just be careful." And he let me go. Right? I don't know if that would have happened anywhere else. I don't, in this area, I don't know, would that have happened in Ferguson? Hell no, that would not have happened in Ferguson.
And Tony, that has never happened to anybody but your ass.
Tony did mention that the officer gave him a donut and a coffee.
Well,
Good morning.
But that is, and that is, to me, that's the exception, and that's not the rule. That doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen. He was a young kid who was young enough probably to be my son, and he couldn't have been nicer, but that's not the, the people who think that Michael Brown was a thug, that's their reality. Mm-hmm. "Hey, Officer John, how are you this morning?" "Good. Pete, how are you, man? I noticed you were swerving." That don't happen in everybody else's world.
No.
It just doesn't happen, and that's the failure for us to understand that we are different. One person is not better than the other. We're just different. And until one group of people understands that, we're going to continue to have these frustrations and these problems and these wrongs that have no answer.
Tony, what about the story about the officer that he was at a police force in the area that was so corrupt that they shut it down?
Well, yeah, Officer Darren Wilson at one point was a member of the Jennings Police Department. Jennings is another suburb of St. Louis, not far from Ferguson. And that police department was disbanded for corruption and because there was so much racial tension between the black and the white officers. And obviously there weren't a lot of black officers, but there was tension, and they just decided to disband it and have the county take it over and police Jennings. And he was a part of that police force when that happened. So whether he was part of the problem, I don't know. He was probably early in his career, and it was probably, at the very least, it was very probably influential on him. At the most, he could have been involved. I don't know.
The New York Times, I think, did a story on that, kind of giving a backstory of Officer Wilson and his experience. He's not originally from Missouri, he's from Texas, and just kind of the background that he certainly hasn't given himself. He certainly hasn't spoken up and said, "Here's who I am, here's my side of the story." But the journalism, they've kind of done a background and spoke about the Jennings Police Department, and I think the police chief said he was an adequate officer, was not unremarkably going above and beyond. He just was an average police officer. And like you said, Tony, early on in his career, and from there, when that police department was disbanded, he went to the Ferguson Police Department. And in the article, it says, a better situation, a better job, earning more money. So yeah, that was a little bit of the backstory.
What about the story? Is that true? Zimmerman was there?
No, he wasn't here. Okay. And see, that's the problem with social media, is that somebody will see something that appears to be a reputable news site, and they will run with it. And if George Zimmerman would have been in Ferguson, that would have been news everywhere.
Yeah.
That would have been breaking. They would have been breaking into regular programming to tell people that George Zimmerman was in Ferguson. So I mean, if you just apply basic logic, no, it wasn't. He wasn't.
Gentlemen who both know me for decades, Troy and Tony, I had to smile and reflect on my argument career, Troy, when that exchange between Talib Kweli and Don Lemon sounded like a Mark Clark conversation. I sat there thinking, what the hell is going on? It was like, wow. It reminded me so much. I've been both very passionate. Mm-hmm. Both of them not necessarily wrong, but it was very interesting. Like, the frustration that a Talib Kweli had because he wanted to say his piece, and then Don Lemon, who, again, Don Lemon I'm sure he was getting the wrap up a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
He was trying to make it right. So it was interesting how two people who are gifted communicators did not really communicate well in that moment, right?
Well, I mean, you have to appreciate the passion from both sides, but like you said, you have to understand broadcast news too. Yeah. And when they tell you got to break, you got to wrap up, you got to break or wrap up, because they will cut your ass off, and then you'll really piss them off when you say we're no longer on the air. And then he's gonna blame you because you're the one he's talking to.
Right.
So we have to understand that you have to understand how broadcasting works. You got these hard breaks where they're not even controlled; they're programmed into the log that will automatically cut you off.
Right.
Because they have to get these breaks in. Because at the end of the day, it's about money, and right. You have to understand that. And hopefully, I hope that someone explained it to him, because I would hate for. It was silly.
Well,
is what it was.
They can all be explained on Talib Kweli's next appearance on the Don Lemon Show. And we know TV. We know that ain't gonna happen no time soon.
No, it's not. It's not.
Does Don Lemon get points? It was the funny part about it is it does kind of speak to the problem also, because at the end of the day, the Talib Kwalis of the world are saying, y'all ain't really telling the real story here. You're here. Yeah, you're here, but you're not telling the real story. There's some other levels going on here that aren't being expressed by anybody. And then,
but you know what, Mark? That's what makes citizen journalism a thing now, so right? Important. Because it's not necessarily Don Lemon telling the story. Don Lemon's reporting the story, but there's somebody above him who's pulling the strings about what gets on the air and what doesn't.
Exactly.
Where you have citizen journalism, and like Antonio French is an alderman from the city of St. Louis who I've known for a while and have interviewed him before, and has been doing some amazing work.
Yeah.
As a citizen journalist, and I really think that if he ever got tired of politics, I think he may have found his second career, because his perspective and what he brought to his followers via social media was some stuff that a lot of us probably would not have known had it not been early on for Antonio French, and
Tony Scott also is doing the same.
Well, yeah,
Tony Scott is taking on the Troy Johnson political manner. What the hell's going on?
Tony's doing it.
Tony was breaking down. This is political. I was like, okay, I didn't know, Tony, you were led by your passion, I guess.
Well, I mean, you're a broadcaster. You're a broadcaster. Your interests are everywhere. That's what makes you, well-rounded and able to deliver content that hopefully people, like. But I think that, we have to give, the broadcast networks that were down there, we have to put it in perspective that the people down there, like Don Lemon, and Don Lemon was probably here because Don Lemon used to work at Channel 2 here locally. So he knows the area to some degree. And that might be one of the reasons why he was chosen to be down here. Hell, it might have been because he's a black man. I don't know. But there are people above him who pull the strings about what gets on and what doesn't get on.
And he also was seen in the Central West End having a few cups of tea. But that's regardless.
Neither here nor there.
Yes.
I think just a caveat on the news coverage aspect of, this indirectly, you guys are talking about the problem that we're complaining about. Information is out there, just random, all kinds of information, which is that's the gift and the curse of citizen media. Because I can point a camera and I can show you a scenario, and there are obviously two ways to tell the story. So I don't have to go through. I don't have to vet it. If I'm a citizen journalist, if you're a journalist, you do. You have to be able to put those stories together. So what happened to Talib Kweli is the story that he told. It's one source of the story. We need some more information to corroborate what happened to him. Citizen journalist doesn't have to do that. But then again, then you get the problem where, you get some stories that hold a lot of truth, and then you get some stories that don't. So and to me, if I were to win the lottery, one of the things that I would like to do. You got to play to win, Tony.
That's true, and I don't play. So, it is you? I would start, and I would have started here in St. Louis because this is where I live. But I would start a web-based news kind of thing that gives you a perspective that has no filter. You know, because I think that there's a market for that. There's something. I think there's something there. And I wish I could explain it in a way because I've tried writing it out, and I just can't. And when I read it after I write it, it's not what I tried to say, and I've done that like 4 or 5 times. But I wish I had the ability to explain it, to be able to like put it on Kickstarter, because I think if I could explain it right, I could probably get some serious startup capital to get the ball rolling on this. But I just can't explain it right, so it's kind of frustrating because here I am. A broadcaster, and I can't convey a message on that people can move people, and it's very frustrating.
Tony, quit saying I can't. You're working it out, man.
I'm fleshing it out, man.
I'm gonna call Talib Kweli and have him yell at you, and then you'll probably be able to spell it right out.
Hey, before we go, man, I wanted to touch a little bit on this ISIS thing because I don't know a lot about it, and I was gonna go to Troy, and I meant to tell him this before we started so he could prepare, but. I know just off the top, man. Basically, what is ISIS, or is the president calls it ISIL?
It's the government calls it ISIL, the Islamic State of Iraq and Levant. It's been called ISIS. It's been they call themselves the Islamic State. It's I'm not a expert on it, but it seems to be militants that are some kind of offshoot of Al Qaeda, and they seem to be much more militant. They seem to be much more focused on creating a caliphate, which is essentially as Islamic State, and they want to implement a Sharia law, and they don't want to. They're not trying to be limited by any boundary of we just want Iraq and we want Syria. They want the whole enchilada. So through a couple of different ways, they've been able to amass quite a bit of money. I think they stole money. I want to say from the Syrian bank. They got millions from that, and then they've held journalists, or not just journalists. They've held foreign citizens for ransom, and I think there's some estimates out there that say they may have generated somewhere in the neighborhood of $136 million in ransom money, coupled with all this other money that they're getting, plus they're getting funded. Now, the difference between Al Qaeda and ISIS that we might be able to understand is the fact that they're much more social media active. This whole situation with the journalist who was just killed. For example, that was shot in HD. They're going. I heard a media expert kind of explain the sophistication of. I didn't see the video, but you guys may have. They didn't show him beheaded. They cut away just before it happened, and then they showed the result. And the guy said that's sophistication because that's not going to play well in the West. The actual act. What happened plays well. We're shocked by it already. So, that little bit of sophistication, there are American citizens that are fighting with ISIS.
I was going to say Douglas McCain is an American that was killed last weekend in Syria where he was fighting for ISIS.
Yeah.
So what is that going to do?
Well, just to give you a little background about the guy I think you're talking about, because I ran across a story about that today. This guy is from Minnesota, played basketball, graduated from high school, had a couple of odd jobs in California, ended up going to Syria, African American, and became a Muslim about 10 years ago. Somewhere along the line, he was radicalized and felt like he needed to fight with his brothers in Syria. And, so he goes on an American passport. The article that I read says a lot of these foreign fighters that join ISIS and groups like it go through Turkey, and that's the gateway into Syria. So it's really interesting. Obviously, the government is concerned about what's going on with this, because if you have Westerners, the guy that killed the journalist is British.
British, yes.
A rapper,
Well, but Troy, was he the
him?
killer, or is he the spokesperson that was on the video?
That I think has yet to be determined. To be more clear, British authorities are identifying who the person is now.
On the video,
the person is on the video. Yes.
Wow.
His father is being held in the United States for terrorist attacks in Africa.
Really?
On U.S. targets, yeah. If you can.
Well, so they know who he is then.
Back in 1998, so they know who that person is. Now,
wow.
Whether or not he actually carried out the killing,
Right.
obviously is at question.
Mm-hmm.
But they believe that. Well, first they said, we know it's somebody who's British. We know it's somebody from London. We know it's somebody who's been educated. And then they started to put all these things together. This guy had one point. It even had one of his songs played on BBC One. So I mean,
he's a musician.
He was a rapper. Rapper turned militant.
Wow.
That's scary.
Wow. That's it. And then we're not talking about Doug McCain. We're not talking about the guy from America. We're talking about the guy that was on the video in the killing of James Foley.
But you know what? There's some similarities that it seems like that are there. 20-something-year-old kids that, it seems like they're trying to suggest that some of these kids who have nothing to do other than play Madden, they sit in their basement. And they're looking for adventure. They're looking for and I think and they're socially inadequate. They aren't mixing with society well. Perhaps, and I'm not saying that this is what they're saying, but I'm saying something to consider. Is that why, again, with this social media, why people are attracted to be a part of this situation?
I think that. I think the lack of connection with religion in the United States. I think there's a gap. There's so much hypocrisy in America right now. I think social media has exposed it, from politics to religion to all this stuff. I think the irony, again, I mean, I work for a company that was majorly owned by a Muslim faction. And not Muslim faction, they were, Muslims. And the irony of it all is from a religious standpoint and the I understand how men are drawn to even the service. Like if you've ever gone to Jummah, I believe you've gone to Jummah before. The vibe is totally different than church. You know what I mean? I think church has these gaps because, to be honest, there's a lot going on in the church that's, that hasn't been dealt with, and it's not very honest. It's not very true. It's not very whatever. And so I think now I'm not talking about radical Islam, just in general. I think I understand why there's an attraction, why men are attracted to the religion. My father-in-law, who was in the Peace Corps and who studied many religions, he always calls it a lovely religion. I think I get it. It resonates. Now, that's it by itself. But then I think that's one aspect. But then the radical piece, like you said, Troy, I think these kids who are raised up with all this violent imagery and the adventure piece, I think those guys, I think the same kids that want to go into the army and the service to fight, I think they're very vulnerable. When you throw, when you throw on top of that kind of desire, the bloodlust, it could go either way. I think it's the same. I think that's the same kid who might probably is enticed by law enforcement, which is now much more militarized. So you got all these military games, all these military images, all this military music, all this violent imagery all around, and then, like you said, a boredom. That's a bad cocktail right there. And then if you take out any kind of moral a moral center, where people just don't have kind of they haven't been grounded. I think you end up having a dangerous cocktail.
But even at that, and I don't think we can blanketly say that every person that wants to go in the military, wants to be in law enforcement, has that kind of viewpoint.
No.
But it is interesting. Somebody go from living in Minnesota, playing basketball and eating Burger King,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
to go to Syria to fight with, a militant group that's killing journalists and Americans and other citizens. It's crazy.
Well, but it's important also to remember that early on there was the American Taliban. Remember him?
Yeah.
Early on.
Well, you know what?
So Mr. McCain is not the first.
They were actually
just the latest.
a few months ago. I remember a story in Los Angeles about a couple of gangbangers that made their way to Syria. And they were throwing up gang signs in the video, two Mexican guys who, are just like fighting.
And that's the sad part to me is the radical, Islam is a religion. The radicals they bring down the religion, because people's image, aren't that clear about the religion in a lot of cases anyway, and they just have it. They have it all wrong though, and so but again, when somebody, it almost makes it easy for that radical recruiter, because you know what I mean. They can kind of hook these vulnerable kids, and those kids believe that that's a part of it, and it has nothing to do with that religion at all. They're terrorists. That's the part.
Yeah.
Terrorist is a terrorist no matter what religion you're talking about.
And there's no mistake to that, what you're saying, Mark, because I was just doing a little bit of research, and his name escapes me now, but the man who leads ISIS has a PhD in Islamic history.
Right.
So they know that they can create an environment that appeals to a select group of people. Right. And I've talked to Muslims who have, said that, this Sharia law that's not what Muslims believe. And, it's almost taking it back to the Stone Age, essentially, taking it back to, the 1300s, I mean, that's just not the way society was built. Not, if you look at pictures of the Middle East in the early 70s, you'd be hard pressed to think you weren't in an American city. Most countries in the Middle East were very westernized. If you look at an early picture of Osama bin Laden with his family, everybody got on jeans and T-shirts. Mm-hmm. It looks like the Jackson family. So obviously something has changed over time, and obviously, this violence and killing it's unnecessary. It just doesn't need to be happening.
All right, we'll leave it right there. That's what we're covering this week. Men on Everything. You can give us a thumbs up and subscribe and comment and share it. That would be awesome. All right. You can sign up for the newsletter at talking360.com. All right. Thanks for watching Men on Everything. That is Troy Johnson. That is Mark Clark. I'm Tony Scott. We'll see you later.